And I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ms. Nestor Jelen, would you kindly call the roll?
D. Owens.
I don't think you're on.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes.
How about now? Okay.
Yes.
Guy
Yes.
Loftman. Here. Pamela Davidson.
Present.
Margaret Clements.
Here.
Skip Daly.
Present as well.
All right. We have all 5 members attending, 4 in person, and a quorum.
Whoa.
That's great. Would you kindly introduce the evidence?
Sure. I'd like to introduce the following items into the evidence. The Monroe County Comprehensive Land Use Plan as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Zoning Ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Subdivision Control Ordinance as adopted and amended. The Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure as adopted and amended. And the cases advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the evidence.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the introduction of evidence. Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Skip Daly.
Yes.
Pamela Davidson.
Yes.
Guy Loftman.
Yes.
D. Owens.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Okay. With regard to the minutes, I'd like to consider the minutes of the June 28th meeting at a later date, because there are some changes that need to be made. Is there a motion to approve the June 7th, 2023 minutes?
I'll move to approve the June 7th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Second? Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve only the June 7th, 2023 minutes. Pamela Davidson.
Yes.
Guy Loftman.
Yes.
D. Owens.
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes?
Skip Daly.
Present. I am continuing my abstention from voting positively on the approval of minutes until my August 2022 motion is addressed.
Okay.
Okay.
So the June 7th, 2023 meeting minutes have been approved by a vote of 4-0.
And the first item on the administrative business agenda.
Pardon me.
Yes.
Point of order. That's 4-0 with 1 voting present. That was not an abstention.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, moving on to administrative business. Item number 1 is proposed changes to the BZA rules of procedure regarding amended petitions. And does anyone have any comments about that?
I move we adopt the proposed Article 8 final disposition of cases.
May I offer some discussion prior to that?
Absolutely. Sure.
I would like to table this until the board has the opportunity to discuss this at more in depth in an executive session due to the fact that this may or may not impact present litigation.
Well, my impression is that it probably doesn't have anything to do with present litigation, that the horse is out of the barn with respect to present litigation, and I don't think this would impact it, but
And can I confirm that? Because if you read that motion, it specifically has the former language that was in effect at the time that case was disposed of.
Neither here nor there. I think that there's a matter that we should discuss in an executive session at this point. And
well, I don't think it's critical that we pass this today. We just have to pass it or not pass it before the next crisis arises, and it doesn't look likely tonight. So I'm glad to
Yes.
second your motion to table and ask administration to planning staff and council to set a date for an
Thank
executive
you.
session.
We'll consult with legal to make sure we can meet in executive session for this topic. It may need to be discussed at a public meeting, but I will check.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
And I think the point is, we need to find out from council whether there is and we could, I guess we have council here, it's not our most common council, but, or do you want to wait? If this is appropriate for executive session, I think we should have one. If council wants to think about that, we should give them the opportunity for that discussion.
I will reiterate my thoughts that this matter needs to have some discussion behind closed doors before we present a public discussion and vote.
Okay, well, my suggestion is staff and council get together, determine whether they think this is something we can legally discuss in executive session, because our rules had to be cited and usually would be discussed in
That's-
open session.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, okay, great. So I think I was moving, and I'll withdraw my motion to adopt this tonight and ask staff to proceed as we've discussed.
I will second that.
Is a vote necessary, Ms. Nestor Jelen?
I think if you would like to table it to the next meeting, that would be helpful, or if you want to remove it from the agenda until further notice, that would also be appropriate.
You could withdraw your motion.
No, I made the motion,
He
which I
made the motion.
withdraw.
Oh,
I suggested he made the
He-
motion.
Yeah, I'm the one who made the motion, and then Skip said, can we talk about it? And I said, yes, and we talked about it, and as a result, I'll withdraw the motion. And they can.
May I recommend that you amend your motion to table it to a time yet to be determined?
Well, you move to table it. I'll second your motion to table it.
So if you could please call the roll on the tabling of this item number 1 under administrative business.
Okay, can I suggest a friendly amendment of a table time frame, maybe 4 months, or do you want it just to
Well,
be
let's, till November.
Prior to the end of the calendar year is fine with me.
by the end of the calendar year?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, so it's been moved and seconded to table this to the December 6th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. A vote in favor is a vote to continue this to December 6th. Margaret Clements?
Yes?
Skip Daly?
Yes.
Guy Loftman?
Yes.
Dee Owens?
Yes.
Pamela Davidson?
yes.
Okay, it's been continued to December 6th.
Okay, item number 2 under administrative business is sojourn draft findings by legal department. So I don't know, Jeff, if you would like to present that to us, or if we just ask if there are questions from members of the committee.
I guess I would ask if there are questions from the members of the committee, and I
Yes.
will answer them to the best of my ability. I don't have a lot of history with this, so if there's factual information's in there, I'm not sure I will be all that helpful. I would say that I've seen a response from the council, I think it's Mr. Clark, Matt Clark, who indicated that these were appropriate and that he did not have any objections to them. He did have one question of whether they wanted to incorporate some of the other documents, but that those are likely already in the record.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cockrell.
And I see that it's dated on the second page in August 2023. I assume that would be corrected to today. So
Yes,
with-
yes, absolutely. It will be, the date that you vote on would be the date in that.
Right.
area.
And will we sign this today if we pass it, or with that, we just write in the correct date? Or do you want us to sign it to some other meeting?
We can,
I think if you approve it today, we can certainly have that change ready tonight for you to execute it tonight. I don't know your normal process on signing documents, but that is not out of the question.
And just to let you know, Mr. Loftman will be leaving at 6:30 tonight. Okay? Okay, so do members of the Board of Zoning Appeals have any questions about these proposed written findings of fact in support of our June 28th, 2023 decision regarding Sojourn House request for use variance?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Owens?
I read through this and I think this follows exactly what we discussed. And so if there's no further discussion, I would make a motion to accept.
I second that.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so if you would please call the roll.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the sojourn findings by the legal department. A vote yes is a vote to approve the findings. Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes?
Skip Daly.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved 5-0, and we will prepare those for your signature. And then D, we will have you sign it electronically. We'll get in touch with you about
Can
that.
do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the first item under new business, we're going to consider now VAR-23-23. This is the Cassidy Detached Accessory Dwelling Unit, condition number 55 variance to Chapter 802 concerning 1.648 plus or minus acre parcel in Perry Township, Section 20, at 4820 to 4830 South Rogers Street. And Ms. Crecelius, if you would be so kind to review this with us?
Yes, thank you. Okay, as you noted, the petition site's in Perry Township. This is a request from multiple tidbits of language under the detached accessory dwelling unit condition 55 under chapter 802. So this is a design standards variance, one single variance, but has multiple nuances to it under those standards. So on the screen is the petition site, seeing an older aerial image. The property, the structure addressed as 4830 and labeled as primary on the south side of the screen. It has currently been relocated. The structure labeled as 4820 is being considered as the DADU under this design standards variance tonight, and that is on the north part of the property. So the intent of this request is to allow the existing dwelling addressed as 4820 South Rogers Street to remain as is. The Board of Zoning Appeals granted a use variance to allow the accessory dwelling use on this property, which is zoned Estate Residential 1 or RE1 on April 5th of 2023. That was labeled as variance 23-7. Otherwise, without that approved use variance, the use of an accessory dwelling unit would not have been permitted in the RE1 zone at all. The approval was conditional, dependent upon connection to sewer. A floodplain development permit has been approved by the county floodplain administrator for the work in the floodplain to extend the sewer laterals to 4830. No work has been started at this time. On the screen is a blown up image of a certified site plan. This shows the relocation of the primary residence 4830. As you can see, it's been moved back to the west on the property. Again, the structure known as 4820, or what's being considered as the detached accessory dwelling unit, is to the north, labeled as existing building. Here is a recent photo of the structure. The petitioner has continued work on the petition site without permits. See the site photos in your report packet for photos showing fill, seating, and other work performed in the right-of-way without a right-of-way activity permit. Additionally, the site had an active stop work order on it until September 18th, 2023. The floodplain development permit issued did not include any work for the driveway removal and possible sidewalk preparation. Almost the entirety of the site is located in a mapped floodway. This request is for an accessory dwelling unit and is defined as a separate, complete housekeeping unit with a separate entrance, kitchen, sleeping area, full bathroom facilities, which is attached or detached extension to an existing single-family structure. So the conditions that we're looking at here today are listed multiple under condition 55, which will apply to accessory dwelling units. Under condition 55, there's a definition, and then there is a list of additional standards, some that apply to attached accessory dwelling units and some that apply to detached accessory dwelling units. I will go through the definition that's listed under condition 55, the kind of the main header, and then the applicable standards for a detached accessory dwelling unit. So shown in red will be items that cannot be met. And then I have comments listed below, bulleted, pointed, and the areas that are statements that cannot meet that highlighted red text is my response in kind of a light yellow. So one of the first issues, although there are multiple here that are met, and which I don't want to undermine that, but we'll start with the first one that is not met, which is under the first kind of heading of condition 55, which is minimum lot size must be 5 acres. The petition site is 0.64 acres and is technically under the required 5 acres. The next one is that before final occupancy of an attached dwelling unit or detached dwelling unit, the property owner must record an affidavit and commitment stating that the property owner will reside on the property. The property owner has to reside either in the principal dwelling unit or the detached accessory dwelling unit. Currently, the petitioner will be required to record an affidavit committing to reside in one of the dwellings. Staff has included this as a condition of approval if the board considers approval.
Okay.
The next one is,
Oh, sorry.
sorry, still going. So the next point is number 2 under then a bulleted list specifically for detached accessory dwelling units, which is that number 2, the DEDU must meet current standards of the residential building, mechanical, electrical, energy, and environmentally critical area codes. At this point, staff had noted that no evidence provided of flood prevention design have been shown. There are no proposed changes. Examples include elevating the structure, adding flood vents, elevating utilities, anchoring, or other flood-resistant materials. This is a very short abbreviation of some routes that could be done to provide some kind of flood prevention. Just to note, there are a few more that the petition site does meet. To highlight this number 2, this is a site conditions map that we've seen before. Both of those structures are fully located within a FEMA mapped floodway. To keep moving forward, number 5, which is a DADU must have a permanent connection to either an approved septic or sewer system. The petitioner has not provided any information from the City of Bloomington Utilities proving sewer connectivity to the site. A capacity letter was submitted for the primary structure, elevated structure at 4830, but nothing has been shown for a detached accessory dwelling unit. There is a floodplain development permit issued to construct those sewer laterals, but no construction has commenced to date. Number 7, which is that each DADU lot shall have a separate buildable area for each dwelling. This is kind of a two-part, which is the property. We would not consider floodway as being located within buildable area, but in April of 2023, the property did receive an approved variance from buildable area for this special flood hazard area, so this would meet the standard. On that same note, though, the structure that is being identified as the detached accessory dwelling unit is located within the front setback required for South Roger Street. The structure is approximately 7.3 feet from the edge of pavement. According to the Monroe County Highway Department, the property does not have any dedicated right-of-way. Included is the letter from the petitioner. And then moving on to staff recommendation. So staff is recommending denial to the following reasons. The residential structure is located fully within mapped floodway and is within the front setback required for the zone RE1. The petitioner hasn't provided any evidence of compliance with flood prevention design standards. And number 2, the petitioner did not submit a letter from the City of Bloomington Utilities proving sewer connectivity on the site. Although there has been a floodplain development permit issued to construct those laterals, no construction has commenced to date. And then included below, staff has included recommended conditions if the board considers approval of the petition. Does
Okay.
anybody have any questions?
Do members of the Board of Zoning Appeals have questions for staff? Mr. Daly?
Present.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Loftman?
Yeah, we did consider this same property in April and went through it in some depth. And I hate to be dense, but what didn't we address there that we're addressing now?
Yeah, so we applied, there were 3 variances, I believe. What applied to the dadu and having 2 structures on 1 lot is we considered a use variance to allow that use on the property.
Yeah.
It wasn't permitted at all.
Right.
So that with the vote to approve, the use is permitted, but it's technically still permitted with standards. So now we're considering those standards, some of which the property still can't meet.
Okay, so first we've got to give general approval, and then we've got to say, but these are the conditions you either have to meet or we waive.
Yes, in theory, we could have heard it all in one night, but if the use got denied, there would be no reason to move forward and prepare
Got it?
this information.
Thank you. It's
So, just for clarification, if I may,
Yes.
you said some of the standards can still not get met. Is that largely due, from my understanding, to the physical location being 7 feet from the street?
In some way, maybe not the setback necessarily, that's unique to the site, but say minimum lot size, right? With the one where it says 5 acres is required.
Sure, but this is 0.64.
So where an accessory dwelling unit is permitted is generally larger lots. So this is an RE1 zone, which has a minimum lot size of 1 acre. So that's where we kind of
And that
see.
did not get addressed in the April meeting?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. You said that the items in red are conditions that cannot be met. 5 acres cannot meet that. But some of the permits, the residency, the floodplain remediation, the septic system, those could be met. So did you mean to say that they have not been met and some can, but a few cannot?
There are conditions that are inherent to the property that cannot be met. Both structures are residences located within the floodway. Although there are steps that can be done that is flood prevention, it doesn't necessarily make it flood proof. Some things could be met, and we have included that in the proposed conditions if you consider it for approval.
I was,
Ms. Owens has her hand
Oh,
raised.
sorry.
Sorry, Ms. Owens?
Very good. Thank you very much. And I read this and then I just heard it again in the presentation, but when you say they're still working without permits, I'd like to expand that just a little bit, as well as having a stop work order that's just 16 days gone and that work was continuing. Can you give a little more detail on that?
Yes. So it was last year in July that a stop work order by the building department was issued. It was in effect until September. When we did a site visit for this variance petition, we did know that there was work done on the site. So there was an area that was filled where the original primary house structure was located, had been filled in, seeded, and then there's and smoothed out. And then there's some evidence of maybe preparation for a sidewalk or some kind of minor landscaping. Work that may have required a floodplain development permit and or a right-of-way activity permit.
Thank you.
Mr. Daly?
thank you, Chairman. Okay, so there was a stop work order issued when? That's in
Last year.
last year, in July of 2022?
Yes, it was active until September 2023.
All right, and the April approval of the variance did not automatically initiate work that was being discussed during that meeting to continue?
That was
Question mark?
correct. There was quite a bit of information that was still requested at that time through the enforcement case that started in July of 2022. So although those variances were great steps towards reaching compliance, there were still engineered plans that the building department were missing, and there was still information for the floodplain development permit that was missing. So
Okay. And the work that was done was seeding?
there was fill in a floodway. So there
Fill
was
in a
a kind of
floodway.
an open pit area where the original elevated structure was located that had been filled
Sure.
and smoothed and seeded. And that would have been, for grass to be established, that would have been done before the stop work order was lifted.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Mr. Lockman?
So, as I understand it, there was a hole in the ground that was filled in without permission?
That's correct.
Yeah. And that hole probably was sort of dangerous. It was close to the road.
Any fill in a floodway would need a floodplain development permit.
I understand.
May-
I understand that but it was a dangerous, it sounds like it was, how deep was the hole, do you know? Was it 2 feet or 7 feet?
The site had fencing around the property for quite a while.
I just want to clarify with a few dates and spot on, but the permit was issued on September 18th, 2023, and I believe your site photos are from September 28th, 2023. But the work that we're discussing under the permit that was issued was largely for the raised abode structure, and is just speaking to the site generally. There was some other work done on the ground that would not have been covered under that improvement location permit. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Well, I think it's time to hear from the Cassidys. And do you both intend to speak tonight? And so why don't you please come to the podium and you both can sign in, and then I'll swear you both in, and you'll have 15 minutes together to team your presentation to us. Thank you.
We really need background music while this is happening.
Yes, that would be good. Go ahead. And if
Good
you-
evening, I'm Randy
Well,
Cass.
if you would
Oh, I'm
please,
sorry.
both of you raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do.
Yes, thank you. Now you have 15 minutes.
Sorry, we got married in the courthouse, and when she said I do, it just hit me. Anyway,
Yes, if you could kindly be sure to speak into the microphone, that would help us with hearing your testimony.
okay, I'm Randy Cassidy. I'm the petitioner in regards to 4830, the redevelopment of the structure at 4820 and 4830. Moving forward, I'm back here. I thought we had it all resolved in April. I was instructed that we didn't have all done in April, and they said you got to do this, so that's why I'm here. I thought we were complete and looking for the building permit. It's taken from our time frame till September 18th, and I got a call and said, okay, building permit's here. I'm just trying to raise the structure and I'm just asking for a design variance to be the same as the use variance, because apparently there are two separate pieces that we had to ask for. And on our existing residence, right there at 4820, that it just be a pre-existing non-conforming because it's been there for 100 years. And our intentions of any particular possibility is making things better. In regards to the aspect, the circumstance of filling around the tanks in the old basement, I will address that specifically. I put storage water tanks in to hold the water, and there was a 2-foot gap. And the reason those were filled in specifically is because of Gigi Ingram, who lives next door, who is about 2 years old and just learned to walk. So that is the specific reason why it was filled around those tanks. I put quarter minus in order to verify that there's no questions in regards to drainage and any issues of that, because we live there, we know it. So that, on that aspect. And the reason you have nice green grass is because it is set as a dirt in order to continue on for a year. And when I did that, it's like, okay, what are we gonna do? So I sodded it in order to get it green and prepared so that we didn't have a mud pit and potential possibility of erosion prior to the fall coming. So that's the particular reasons to address those. And what I just asked, and Tamby, I'll yield time to her. She has all the particular details and aspects of hydrology and such. But I'm just asking for pre-existing non-conforming on the 4820 residence. It will have sewer. It will have electricity, gas. We will be there, and it's gonna be good in the end. But this is painful sometimes, but I appreciate your help.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy.
Okay, so I just do have a few details. We were asked the question for the last hearing about some of these details that it didn't seem like they would be a use variance detail because now we're into design variance. But this has to do with drainage. The house is 980 square feet, just so you know for the record. It has 732 square inches of vent drains, and it would be required to have 627. So it's in excess of almost 17% of what it has to have. In addition to that, we have from the city of Bloomington, where we have applied for the sewer, we applied for the sewer for 4820 last year. We've had a discussion with them about the connection for 4830. She shifted the application from 4820 to 4830. They are both on the same service. They are two structures on one lot, and they've been on the same city water service because they're two structures on one lot. And her explanation to that today in an email back to me is that we already have water service for 4830, and it also serves 4820. I changed the application address to 4830 and posted the payment to this location. And she basically says that it's served on the same, just reaffirming that it is served on the same. Now, we had civils drawn in our plan for them to have two separate sewer services, and that is what the civil plans show. So, and that is a plan that's approved up to putting in the sewer connection, but an application has not been submitted yet for that connection. And we do realize that that will be an application that has to be forthcoming. So to conclude, I just want to reaffirm what Randy said. It's really hard living with your yard being dirt for a year. And at some point you just kind of get over it, and you have to have some grass. I mean, I hope I'm entitled to have some grass and some plants because I planted 14 shrubs yesterday. So just to kind of conclude, I feel personally that planning should have found this a recommend for approval because of the decision that was made in April to approve the use variance, and that was by Board Member Loftman stating that elevating the house was improve the floodway in Clear Creek. Leaving this house as is doesn't change the floodway. The net is a gain because we did describe that we had already put in those detention things. Mr. Cassidy has presented sworn evidence that there are sufficient openings, and I have just reinforced that. To relieve the hydrostatic pressure as it might occur, we haven't had a flood occur there in that house that we're living in. We've owned it since 2017. And then part of Board Member Loftman's statement He has already satisfied to his understanding that requirement. I am not willing to put in my motion that it be elevated. The net effect is to improve things. If the net effect is to improve things and conserve things, I am comfortable with saying we should approve it for the very reasons that you said, with the condition, which has been agreed to, that it be connected to the sewer. That is critical, I think. I made a motion, and that was the motion that was voted upon. So therefore, I feel that our request to continue with this additional structure as is, and we are still presently living in it since we just got our building permit for the other, I think that that should continue forward. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So much. Sorry for my frustration.
Do members of the board have questions for either Mr. or Ms. Cassidy?
I do have a question. Thanks for the explanation. You've probably seen the 4 suggestions, the recommended conditions that the staff has made. How do you feel about those? Are they doable, not doable? Can you address those for us?
Well, the sewer is doable, of
Okay,
course.
Number 1 is doable.
But-
Time constraints are what your issue runs into, because we're still waiting on an additional approval to come forth before we can do any of this. From county drainage,
From what? From what? County what?
county, it's on
The drainage
the
board.
drainage for the,
So would 60 or 90 days?
I don't know. They've had it since April.
I see.
Okay, that's number 1. How about number 2? Occupancy.
So number 2 is no, because that's the request that itemizes. We are requesting that it continue on as a pre-existing non-conforming structure. It was not identified as a DADU previously.
the dad who came up when I was told I had to come back and do something to get the thing, and then we got the building permit before, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm just following kind of what I'm told to try to keep things moving, because, this has been a long time, and it's okay, but there's a point where we gotta make things right, I'm not, I'll just be quiet.
May I interrupt for a moment? Can we have whoever's in charge of the screen raise the recommendations up so they can be seen over the closed caption?
I don't think they can do that. It's a page.
Yes.
Yeah. What about
I
item?
can edit this in just one moment. You'll see it.
Okay. So-
Also, just to clarify, are you speaking to the part underneath if the board recommends approval? Okay, so can you repeat what you mentioned about number 2?
Under what?
Number 2,
Oh, no.
you're not going to sign an affidavit?
No.
Okay, I don't believe that was addressed as a deficiency in the DADU requirements.
We're not
Was that-
requesting a DADU, we're requesting a pre-existing non-conforming 2 residences on 1 lot, because that's what it was before this whole thing started. And they were both rental properties. And they were both reasonably priced rental properties.
So I just want to clarify, I think we spoke about this back about a year ago, when the first structure, 4830, was altered, the lot lost its pre-existing non-conforming status, which is why we're
I
here
understand your
tonight.
stance on that, and we are still making that request. Thank you.
Okay.
Isn't
Tonight
that what the
is a-
board, isn't that what the board overturned in our decision in April? Because that was my understanding.
That's mine as well.
The
And he was-
board tonight, we have a request before us for a detached accessory dwelling unit application. So this is a discussion about having a detached accessory dwelling unit on the property. If there was a discussion about having 2 homes on one lot and the one structure being considered pre-existing non-conforming, that would have been an appeal of that decision that we made last year. That would be a different process.
And I would have known that in what way? It's okay, we're not gonna, there's no sense having dialogue back and forth. We've now identified exactly what it is. So,
Okay.
we thought we were done in April, to be quite honest. We thought we were done, and this came back, and then.
So
okay,
we
then
were
you-
having
you came back.
difficulty understanding why they were requesting us to be here again, because the application was not created by us. There was a conversation between Randy and the planning staff member, and the planning staff member created the application and then recently prompted a letter to go along with that application, and then we were able to get our building permit.
We couldn't get our building permit until we did whatever we were told. And
So
it's okay, I'm just trying to get through it. So I thought we were done in April. Obviously, this is,
I'd just like to ask staff, I'm sorry for the complication here and for the kind of changing the order of things, but under 2, we're empowered as the Board of Zoning Appeals to eliminate that requirement, the record affidavit per condition number 55. We can void that recommendation of staff as the Board of Zoning Appeals, correct?
So any of the conditions under Chapter 802, Condition 55 could be, you have the authority to say whether that could apply. We will say that the more conditions that don't, that are being waived or that you're granting a variance to, the further it is from the actual use that's stated in the ordinance.
Yes. And how do we fix the idea that these 2 properties, in their mind, are pre-existing non-conforming structures? And in your mind, they're in a situation right now where they have an animal they don't understand, like a new house that is subject to zoning requirements, as well as a detached accessory dwelling unit that they never intended to have. How do we fix that? Appeal through,
Appeal the determination that it was not a pre-existing non-conforming structure. You told us that that's the way, and I feel awful that it's 2 roads diverge to the yellow wood right here. What's before us, which is not going to fit, because there are conditions they cannot meet because of this definition. So it sounds like they're going to have to appeal the determination that they did not have a pre-existing non-conforming structure. Is that true?
The appeal process, it allows 30 days from the time of that determination. What I will say is that we can go back through the history and look at when we mentioned to the Cassidys that was no longer allowed since they had altered the original structure. And I can look at the date of that. But I will say that for the purposes of the request, I believe that the request tonight for the DADU is getting to the same end goal as what it would be if you would have appealed a decision to have 2 pre-existing non-conforming structures.
I
But
see.
the BZA, if they grant they granted a use variance. If they grant variances to the DADU, it would just be a legal structure. Now, if it's damaged, it would still have to go through, requirements under 808 for following flood damage requirements, but it's a legal structure. So it's not going to be pre-existing non-conforming. It would just be considered conforming if granted these variances.
and if we strike condition number 2, is that right? To my legal friends here, my
Well,
attorney
we
friends.
haven't gone through all 4 of them.
No.
Well,
so
let's hear,
maybe
let's hear from the petitioner about, there was a question asking them about all 4 of the conditions and their thoughts on them, and we've only heard 2. So let's hear what they have to say and weigh what we may or may not.
And I also see that Ms. Owens has her hand raised, even though I can't see it from here. Let me defer to Ms. Owens.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I have a question, especially that was brought up by the certificate of occupancy piece number 2, and that is that I heard the Cassidys say that they live at that property, but then I turned around and heard Mrs. Cassidy say that they were two really good rentals. So I want to know which is it.
Well, one of my renters had a stroke last summer and he had to move out, and we did not have a home. We sold our primary residence about a year before that, so we moved into it so that we could work on the project to fix up the other house.
Okay.
So-
Okay. Thank you.
I think that the reason why they don't want to have to sign this certificate of occupancy is because they have used it as rentals in the past, and they would like to continue using it as rentals in the future. You know, isn't that correct? I mean,
Yes.
yes, yes.
So,
So that's why the item number 2 is problematic for them. That's why that's problematic for them. So let's go down to item number 3, because we were asking you for your feedback on after the fact floodplain development permit through planning department to review the driveway configuration and possible sidewalk work.
I just need to have a time frame it can be done, if that's the case.
And
The only reconfiguration of the existing driveways, I put grass over the other one. I can have it back tomorrow. I was kind of instructed, well, if this was going to change, you had to do that. Okay, we had 3 driveways on the properties. If you take one out, it makes it safer.
yes.
So I just put grass over it. If someone wants it back, okay.
Okay, staff, do you have anything to add to that?
Right. I would like to just say that under federal and state requirements, that any development within a floodway requires a permit. And so we have observed that you removed a whole driveway. Looks like you're putting in a sidewalk. Looks like there was a paved
not a
area
sidewalk.
to the street.
Let's clarify so that we don't have any issues.
There has been activity and development that looks like has been occurring, and that requires a permit. And we have, as staff, has not seen an application. I need to have state approval for some of the things that have been occurring and not been disclosed on the site.
Do you have the permit that we got last year for the site?
Elevated abode. Yes, I have that. I also issued
And
a
what-
local permit for your elevated abode. I did not issue permits for driveway reconfigurations or the other development that seems to have, there is nothing in writing. I have no knowledge of the storage and the
So when
fill
you-
that occurred on the site either.
What storage? The water storage.
Correct.
So leave it, oh.
I do not, I
Okay,
think it is a
Tammy,
good
I'm
step,
going to-
but I
because
have
this-
no
this is
knowledge.
probably going to get a little personal. And I really wanna
Well,
avoid
let's
that
not,
capacity.
let's just not make it personal. Let's
I know, I
just,
know.
so-
So going back to number 3.
yes.
The concern I have is Tammy Berman and the time frame it will take for her to review it and either approve it or deny it. It's very simple on that because it's specifically in Tammy's court. And if I want to go back to the entire ordinance of what it is, the floodplain administrator is supposed to be the director. And that's per the own planning ordinance. So
Well,
I'm trying to.
In your idea, how could that item number 3 be solved?
I have to know what it takes to satisfy Tammy in requirements. I don't know.
Okay.
And this has been going on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I have to say, you tell me. I don't want to get this way. I'm 60, I'll be 61.
Right.
I've only got a certain window of time and energy to try to make things better. And I'll give you the 90-day, I'll do the number one. It'll be soon. It'll be done. Going to number 3, I'm happy to get a floodway development permit, but I really need to know what kind of realistic time frame we're going to be working with, so I'm just not set into a regulatory hole, because we've been trying to rebuild Clear Creek for 5 years.
Right.
Madam
It's
Chair.
still held up
Yes.
on one.
Madam,
Yes.
Mr. Cassidy,
I apologize.
I have a question.
Sit down, let her take it from here.
Wait.
Because this is not going to work out well for me long term, because
Mr.
Just
Cassidy,
just a minute.
let me just ask staff a question real
I
quick.
have one as well.
What is the presumed timeframe for Monroe County planning staff to review the driveway configuration, possible sideway walk work, and issue a permit? What is the approximate timeframe?
In order to issue a local flood development permit in a regulated floodway, it requires a state permit.
A state
A
permit?
DNR
Okay.
permit. And
Okay.
that is a requirement whenever you're
Okay.
working in the most restrictive part of the floodplain.
Absolutely. And are you do a lot of work with them, and you've presumably done this on a number of occasions through your career. What time frame does the state typically take? I understand we're not holding you to this. I'm just trying to get a ballpark figure. So,
A
and
lot
I'm
of
also
it-
trying to divert some
Sure.
tensions.
A lot of it depends on how complete the application is. And that if there is a complete application filed, I feel like DNR has been able to get 3 months in.
3 months?
But to me, it looks like they're almost asking for an after the fact permit. So
Okay.
we just need to confirm that what they did is not going to be impactful and it is going to demonstrate no rise and comply with the, the National Flood Insurance Program for us to remain in that program.
In your-
Yes, go
In
ahead.
your best guess, with what you said does have to happen because of the after the fact aspect, 3 months would take us to the end of the calendar year. Do you truly believe that that's a reality?
I don't know how complete an application would be. Depends on who they work with.
All right,
They may need a hydrologist to
all right.
issue a no rise certificate.
May I redress
Yes.
the Cassidys? We're hearing that the process would reasonably take 3 months. What does that sound like to you?
We did the DNR permit previously without any issues. So I'm really surprised that this is another
Okay.
cog in the wheel that's just trying to stop.
I'm trying to find a way to help
And-
make this happen.
If the DNR permit that was there doesn't qualify on this site.
Okay, it apparently doesn't. I don't understand why.
I'd
But
like
at this point, we're talking 3 months. Is that, if we're looking at 3 to possibly 4 months, is that a time frame that you're comfortable with to maintain this, this condition? Yes or no?
We don't have control of that because it is up to the state and they do take at least 90 days.
I
I've
have a
been through it
question.
twice on the property across the street and it does take that long.
Okay,
And then it's the amount of time that it takes from that point to their approval. Now, the situation is and has been in the past that the specific items are not identified when it goes to the state. It gets approved at the state and then not approved locally. It needs to be reviewed before it goes to the state, and that cannot take a long time.
And is
So
it,
we need a finite list of items if we're applying for an after-the-fact driveway, right-of-way, whatever it is. It's not a sidewalk.
There is no sidewalk.
Sewer, that will have to be included in that
Yeah, sewer we're fine.
floodplain permit.
but is this all because you're now in a situation where you're not a pre-existing non-conforming? So, Tammy, no?
Floodplain is not. The floodplain is what the floodway, because we're in the
We
floodway.
went through the entire DNR permit. I've done site surveys. I've got elevations.
Right,
We've spent a lot of time,
Right.
and a lot of money.
but I just want to ask staff, is this all because they are in now not a pre-existing non-conforming? No.
So
I would recommend maybe let's just talk out loud what's being requested.
Yes.
And maybe we can walk through this
Yes.
together. So
Yes.
what we have on the screen is 4830, which is the elevated abode.
Yes.
And that was the subject of discussion at the April meeting.
Yes.
That elevated abode has received proper permits,
Yes.
and the work that's being done for that elevated abode can continue.
Yes.
The discussion tonight is about 4820 and its current status as a second dwelling on the property. So my understanding is that there's no exterior work or work being done to that structure because we don't have a specific permit for that
Right, we
structure.
haven't
Is that
done
correct?
anything.
Okay, so the discussion tonight is to allow that 4820 to be existing on the property in perpetuity. That's the request for tonight.
That's what was done in April. That's what
So
we
the-
thought was done and complete.
Because that was the use variance.
That was the use
And then
variance.
now we've read in the fine print of the packet, which is the first time I've been able to determine that this is a design standard variance.
Yes. So the use variance at 4830 and 4820, the property, allows you to, the ordinance would assume that, let's say you just had one home on the property. That use variance would allow you to go ahead and build a new structure on that property. What you're asking for is to have the existing structure be counted as the DADU that you got a use variance for. And so because the design standard of that existing 4820 doesn't meet the standards of the DADU, we're back to address, here's how this 4820 does not meet the standards of the DADU requirements. And so if the BZA approves those conditions as variances and does not make that apply to 4820, then it can be considered a detached accessory dwelling unit, and it has a use variance, so the use is permitted, and the structure is meeting all of the requirements with the variance approval.
So based on the language that was utilized for the motion in April, it did not identify that it was a DADU. It identified that it was a structure that we could keep as it was. And then this design variance came up, so it's like, oh, is this a gotcha? So now we're gonna add more requirements to it so that we can kick it into a DADU, and that's not
I
what we
think-
requested, and that's not what was voted on, and now you're asking that to be voted on, and we're saying, no, that's not
We just
what
want,
we thought.
we just want to get it to a point where we don't have to have these discussions
Right.
and come in on a consistent basis.
Right.
Just to try to rebuild a community in a brownfield that, quite frankly, most people wouldn't give a damn about, tear down, and move on.
Right.
And with this, I'm gonna ask Jackie, I'm gonna ask Tammy, I'm asking Ann to cooperate and try it. If we have to change an ordinance, I'll pay the ordinance fee.
Well, this
But
is the
just
thing.
have to change
The
it so-
ordinance is not fitting this property because it's pre-existing non-conforming, and the word DADU is not gonna fit this property. The word DADU is not gonna, we have a problem with our upcoming ordinance that we're trying to retrofit modern terms on a county that isn't just a franchise operation of every other community that this consultant wants to make us fit into. This does not fit. So our job here today is to make this fit. And we've got ongoing things because of the floodplain, and we don't want anybody to get hurt in the flood insurance. I know you share that. And I'm just trying to think of how do we get around this with the rules that we have? And, yes, Mr. Lockman.
I'm, when you were with us in April, were you requesting a DADU?
No,
Okay.
we were requesting to keep the existing home the way that it was, and so that in the event that we wanted to utilize it for our family members or to lease it in the future, that we would be able to do so.
Right, and I remember the family members thinking that it was, and if you weren't gonna rent it, a DADU would be fine.
Right.
But if you want to rent it, it can't be a DADU. And that's the reason you are uncomfortable with the condition 2.
And also condition 3 has a problem, but Tammy, would you please, yes.
I just wanted to I pulled up the meeting minutes from
Yes.
April 7th, 2023. And number 2, VAR-23-7 states that it was a Cassidy use variance to detached accessory dwelling unit in chapter 802. So
But
it
that was
wasn't
in the
use
planning
variance
department's
request.
summary. That was in your definition, and then we had our chance to speak and spoke and said that is not what we're here for. You guys have
It
to
was a
take
letter
it,
that
and
was
you have-
submitted to planning, and
You have to put it into your mold.
And the mold's not fitting. That's the problem.
I think
I have some concerns if
Yes.
we are, if they're not consenting to the variance before the board. I want to make sure I can take a recess and talk with them about what this request is for. If you vote on something and you don't consent to that we even made this petition with your assistance, then I think we should talk about how to proceed, because I don't want you to apply for something that you don't
Just a minute.
think is fitting for the property.
If we get rid of all you guys' recommendation for approval, except we know we gotta put a floodplain development permit in to hook the sewer up.
And we've already agreed to do this.
that, and we're going to do it, we have to do it. Now, in order to put sewer in, or to do that, I have to cut the road. Well, unless we get approval, so what I'm looking at is just asking the question. I'm gonna calm down a little bit, okay? It's not my nature, I suck at poker, okay? Everybody knows pretty much how I feel when they look at me. So, from that, on the sewer capacity letter, we've got that.
Yeah.
Okay. The physical connection to sewer, I'm okay. As soon as we get the approvals through to do it, we'll do it. We'll do it within 90 days of certificate of occupancy of 4830, but I can't even start until I know that this is either gonna go or not go. Number 2, we've discussed that in depth. The floodway development permit, I honestly, as I put this, thought when I went through this all with DNR and Tammy, that was a done deal. And so that one kind of gets me, because now we're into, again, time frame, long term, don't know. And then number 4, yes, we're gonna do that for the sewer, correct? So, yeah, number 4 we're good with, number 1 we're good with. It's 2 and 3.
Okay, okay, I think that,
May I ask first of the staff, the issue of the DNR permit that we've talked about with 90 days and so on, that the Cassidy said they worked on and worked on and worked on. What's the status of that? Is there a DNR permit for floodplain use in that area? Has that hurdle already been, met?
To my knowledge, this property has a elevated abode permit from DNR, which allowed me to issue the local flood development permit for the elevated abode. And if we look at the site plan, perhaps, Anne, you could pull up the site plan for this site. That was in the packet. I think you might have had it in there as well. That's the site plan for what was approved.
existing.
It also shows the house that's on the site. There's the one that we're talking about tonight. There's a separate flood development permit and state floodway permit for the sewer laterals, for those to be allowed to be installed in the floodway. The sewer has not been built yet, which will be outside of the floodway. And until that sewer line is built, the sewer laterals cannot go in and be connected to the structures. What's missing, and looking at the site plan here, staff has never heard about the driveway reconfiguration for the property. When we did a site visit, it looks like they were intending to do sidewalks. Now, we've heard differently, but I will say that in the flood development ordinance, sidewalks and driveways cannot be made with permeable materials that would be coming back for another variance if you design them to be asphalt or concrete, and I think I'm seeing concrete out there.
That's not concrete.
There is no
There
concrete
is no
there.
concrete, and there will never be any concrete, just so you're aware. There will not be concrete.
I wonder if we, as the Board of Zoning Appeals, have the authority here tonight to consider, okay, 4830 is fine. Do we have the authority tonight to consider 4820 and to define it as pre-existing non-conforming? And that therefore they don't have to be subject to these recommendations and these conditions for 4820. It's not a detached accessory dwelling unit. It is a pre-existing non-conforming building. 4830 is conforming now. And so do we have the authority in our recommendations and in our vote to say 4820 returns to a pre-existing non-conforming building?
I don't believe that is what is before you, and I'm not sure that that is possible. I can pull up the chapter 803 to go over what the issue was in the beginning as to why it lost its pre-existing non-conforming status, if you would like. But again, the request before you is to allow it to become a DADU.
Okay, Mr. Daly?
All right. I agree that I don't believe that that can happen based
Yeah.
upon what we have, and that would be a whole other paperwork trail. If this gets approved as conforming at this point, if this variance gets approved, does that mean, unless if we put in a caveat that the petitioner must get this DNR, that they're in the clear at that point?
The
Does
condition
this
for the
variance
DNR
make it conforming and supersede the state DNR need to have that?
No, that condition is just saying that before you're granting the approval of the detached accessory dwelling unit, they need to come up to, they need to get their local floodplain development permit and the state permit. They have to do that regardless. So either if you condition it
So whether
tonight,
that's a condition or not, that's in here. So it's
Yes.
moot. No, number 3 is moot.
unless you want it to happen prior to the structure being deemed conforming as a DADU.
All right. I don't know that at this point that I'm where I stand on that. Okay, all right. So regulation 3, recommendation 3 on there is just whether or not it's before or after. You still have to get it. That
Right.
clears a lot up for me.
Okay, so we do need to hear from the public. So if there are members of the public who are in the room.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr.
I'm-
Lockman.
I'm sorry. I
It's
know.
okay.
Mr. and Mrs. Cassidy, I'm looking at the letter, petitioner's letter in this packet. And it seems, I read it as saying this, as that this document for obtaining approval to allow dwelling at 4830 as detached accessory dwelling unit.
Now,
It-
straight up on that, and I don't want to throw anyone on the bus, that was written by the planning department and said, here, what do you want to put? And that-
Okay.
So I was
And-
I did it because I was told to, in
Okay,
order to
but
make
let
this
me,
work.
let me pursue that.
Okay.
If you agree that it will not be a rental, that it'll be a DADU, which is what I sort of was assuming when we were talking about this, then all these problems, I think, are easily solved. The problem, as I see it, is this, and I understand you were trying to go along and didn't quite understand that that meant you wouldn't be able to rent it out. But
And it's not even the rental. It's not even the rental. I mean, at this point, guys, tell me when you want me to tear it down.
no, but, okay,
Yeah,
you,
so that's where
it's,
I'm at this.
you could not, it's not a rentable property.
It is.
Okay,
It is. It was. Scott Morgan, who ran the Monroe County Solid Waste, was renting it until he had a stroke.
okay, so the issue, it seems to me, is if you all accept that it's a dadu, which you did seem to accept, because that's what your letter says.
We're okay with the dadu, I just don't need recommendations and deed restrictions on it.
When you're told you have to be here and you need a letter, and this is honestly, I'm trying to leave this in Randy's court, and Randy's a very busy guy who lost his mother about a year ago. And it's been enough to handle everything else.
Okay,
So we're here because planning wants us to be here so we can proceed and try to
right.
keep
And
the whole house.
what
Maybe
you
it's just
didn't
not working.
understand until tonight was that the dadu meant forever.
Right.
That you thought you thought you'd use it for your family, but you also thought you could rent it. But now you find out you can't have it both ways. Either you gotta say it's just for family or it's rental. And what's before us is family. If we grant this, you can proceed to do anything you want to, except rent it out. If you want to rent it out in the future, I think you'd have to start a whole new procedure, and which I don't know if it would ever work. But I do know that from my perspective, there's a very substantial chance that you can get approval from me tonight if you say it's a dadu, which is what you said you were going to ask for.
I'm okay with it, I just want to get rid of the conditions. I
But,
don't want to be
but
held.
one of the conditions as a dadu is that you sign that affidavit. That you can't have a dadu without that affidavit.
No, I mean, we could recommend, we could remove that recommendation.
But then it's not,
It's still non-conforming, but it's less non-conforming than it was before.
okay. Well, so, thank you.
Dadu doesn't apply to them. We've got these terms that are not fitting their situation because it's been pre-existing non-conforming for a long time.
I understand the catch-22.
Yeah,
That no solution fits the problem.
right.
And if they were comfortable signing the affidavit for a dadu, then we could work around, then they could do that, and these other things can go away. But I hear other people on this board saying, we don't need to make it a dadu, we just need to make it a non-conforming, a permitted non-conforming use, which it was, and I don't object to that. It just seems to me I didn't know that was what we were talking about till now.
But the staff said we really can't do that.
But I'm
We
inclined.
really cannot do that, so.
So what's before you is to grant a variance from condition 55, which is including that affidavit. It includes the 5-acre minimum. It includes that they meet all building code, electrical, residential
Okay.
code. It includes everything. And just to clarify, the affidavit isn't that you have to live in the dadu, it's that you live in the dadu or the primary structure on the lot. So if you were living in 4830, you would still be compliant with that affidavit.
But we
That's
could,
not what I read in a previous packet.
but we could eliminate that requirement as the board. We could
You
say,
could.
the Board of Zoning Appeals recommends approval with the following conditions, and we could omit that condition.
Right.
Right, yes.
Yes.
That's condition 55 is what is of discussion.
Yes.
And so some of these conditions are, I think, number 2, record an affidavit per condition number 55 is because I think we weren't sure that they were going to live on the property to begin with. So that's one portion of condition 55 that, if could be met, would still stay with the intent of the dadu requirement, which is that, you know, it's owner occupied and then one accessory dwelling unit.
So it could be
Could
complied
I
with.
ask something as well, please?
Yes, Ms. Owens?
Thank you. Back on the, back to the floodplain piece, which to me originally was my biggest issue. Were they told, I don't have access back to the April 5th meeting, minutes, but were they told that, or was it made clear that the state permit would need to be worked out at that point in time, or at any point in time? Was it noted that that flood development plan had to be put in place.
I think the question, D, are you saying the floodplain development permit for the elevated abode, which we saw in April, or are you asking about the new work that's been done since?
Yeah, for the new work, because I understand that there's federal requirements when you're sitting in a floodplain, it's just the way it is. State requirements, that's just the way it is. The first, the 4820 that's covered, dealt with, DNR, all's good. Now, for the new one, how soon have they been told, or were they told at all before tonight, as part of these are some of the things, if we do approve, that we should do as the BCA, is this new information to the Cassidys that they got to come up with that? Because that's one of the things that was discussed in our paperwork, is that they didn't do it. Did they know they were supposed to do it? And if so, when did they know?
I think we didn't know that they were planning to remove a driveway and do what appears to be sidewalks. And it was a shock when we went out and did a site visit and saw that work had been done that had never been disclosed on any of the permits. Which is why we would like to know what it was, what the full intent is for the property, and just have that documented so that when I am audited by DNR to confirm that we are complying with the federal regulations, so that we can stay in the flood insurance program, that I can prove that and have those permits documented.
Right, and that's absolutely important for the entire county, not just this property. So, thank you.
And just to follow up on that, the staff made a site visit on September 28th, which is 6 days prior to today. And so the packet went out that day that the site visit was made with this information in it. So that was the soonest that we saw that the work was done, and that was when we communicated in the packet. Now, I don't know if the Cassidys came to the office to talk to us about it, or...
Ann was gone, and you
Randy.
really tried.
Okay, I was just...
Okay, so time-wise, all I want to know at this point, either I'm okay with the data, screw it. I'm okay with the data. We'll do a data. If you can remove the conditions, it's okay. I'm going to tear it down when it's all said and done. Heck with it. I was told I was probably going to have to remove a driveway. And my wife wanted grass, to be quite frank. And I had Georgia walking out at the rental next door that we own, looking around. Chandler, their son, lost a ball. So I filmed it and had it taken care of to make sure it was all safe and permeable. So I apologize. I really do. But damn it, girls. Work with us to get something done, please.
Okay, I need to hear from the public.
Whatever conditions you say, but I want to walk out of here tonight and either know we can make something better, or we can in a time frame to realistically work it. Because Jack, we've had time for a year, and we've been working on Fifth Third for 5 years.
Okay.
But
So I apologize. Please approve
we need to,
this without
point of order, we need to hear from the public.
Yes. Yeah. We need to hear from the public. If the public is here and would like to speak on this issue, either in favor or in opposition, please come to the podium. Please raise your virtual hand on Zoom, or please press *9 on your telephone in order to weigh in on this issue. And let me know if you see anyone. We don't see anyone. So coming back to the Board of Zoning Appeals, is there any further discussion and/or a motion?
I definitely, the frustration is palatable. Please understand that the changes go with the property, not with your ownership. So we have to look as a long view. And the fact that they are the federal rules about the floodplain, what can we do about that except comply and do those things? So as I listen to you, if you're okay with the DADU, then these restrictions really ought to work. They ought not to work, but I would suggest that because there are particulars about that the Cassidys sit down in the next few days with the staff and go through this is what we need to do for these conditions.
Yes.
So we have a meeting of the minds and we don't, your frustration is you've returned since April and you feel that it was decided, but it was not. So maybe the staff fleshing out the details along these lines of recommendations, that makes our vote much more solidified.
Here's what where I am on this, and I don't know how other members of the Board of Zoning Appeals feel, but I'm inclined to recommend approval without any conditions, because the Cassidys are going to meet the conditions, and let's just let them get it done. That's the fastest way to get the conditions done. Now, I would, of course, ask the Cassidys to sit down with Jackie and Tammy and say, okay, how can we avoid trouble going forward? And let us know now so that we can get it done, and let's get all these things done in compliance so we can get that floodplain development permit after the fact. But I'm saying let's just approve it without conditions, because they're in a Kafka-esque situation. I don't know how other people feel about that, but I'm ready to.
I am sympathetic to that.
Are you sympathetic? Is anybody else?
I'm concerned that going forward, when the Cassidys are no longer residents, then this issue will come back around because it won't be a DADU and it won't be non-conforming pre-existing condition. It'll be
They'll
something
have all that met.
else.
They'll have it all met.
And I remember his testimony. They plan to own that for life, and that will be his testimony in April. I am interested in actually making a motion with a recommendation condition number 1 for the 90 days.
For the sewer capacity letter.
Yes.
Is it, okay.
So with
that, I'd just like to say, in terms of our standards variances concerned, that we believe your sworn testimony, that you are going to ensure that you meet the floodplain requirements so that we don't place our community in hazard. So you're going to work with Tammy and with the DNR, and you're going to get those certifications. It's just all this timing stuff that's preventing you from meeting it. Okay, so you're going to work with staff to get that done. And so therefore, the use variance will not be injurious to public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. And that 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property will actually be improved in a substantially better manner, because you're taking a pre-existing non-conforming and you're turning it into something that fits into that neighborhood, and you're going to take care of the issues we've discussed tonight. And that the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property involved. And that certainly is true because of the discussion that we had of the pre-existing non-conforming use issue. And you're in this mess because of all the technicalities that you're going to be resolving going forward. And that the strict terms of the zoning ordinance constitute an unnecessary hardship. You've described it tonight if applied to this property. And that the approval does not substantially interfere with the comprehensive plan. And I feel that those conditions have been met. Do you have any objections to that, Mr. Daly, with your motion?
I don't object to that, but were those the standards for?
Those are the 5
for the,
standards for use variance approval that have to be met.
But is this a use? I thought this turned into a design.
This is a design standards
This is a design
variance.
standard variance.
This says here 812-5 standards use variance approval. In order to approve a use variance.
Right,
Is
but
that
this
a
is a
typo?
design.
That is a typo. I
Okay, so
apologize.
for the design standards variance then.
I think you quoted the right criteria, though.
Okay, the criteria
Yep.
are included, so I think they still apply.
Okay. And
I agree that the
Yeah.
standards are reasonably addressed. I would like to make a motion for approval with the condition that the sewer capacity letter be provided to staff under an improvement location permit 90 days of the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the address on record.
Nothing about the DNR permit for the floodplain? Nothing about that?
We're going to approve this. It becomes, when we approve this, if this gets approved, it becomes compliant, and the DNR permits are necessary before the work is completed by state statute, which is what we were just told. So it's moot for us to put this in and to have them require that prior to moving forward. That is my stance on this. It has to be done, but does it have to be done before we call this compliant? No.
Is Mr. Daly's conclusion correct about that?
So I'll just go what the next steps would be if a design standards variance was granted tonight. So after tonight, we would ask that the Cassidys apply to reclassify the structure 4820 as a detached accessory dwelling unit. So that would be an improvement location permit to change the classification of the structure to become a DADU. If you're waiving the conditions of Chapter 802, Condition 55, then there would be no other requirements before we could issue that permit. If there are any conditions, such as a sewer capacity letter or an after-the-fact development floodplain permit, we wouldn't be able to issue that improvement location permit at that time. Now, regardless, we have to do a floodplain development permit on this lot. The question may become whether that work that was done without a permit, it bumps it into a category of enforcement and that we wouldn't be able to issue any further permits until that is rectified. That would be a question for legal. But we did put it into this as a condition just for clarity's sake to say this will be required. But we in no way mean that the BZA has the authority to waive that requirement because that's a requirement outside of this Condition 55. Does that make sense?
They don't look happy. They don't look happy. This may not work for them.
Yeah.
I'm just ready to go up to Indianapolis and submit the application myself.
What permits do you need? What's the procedure?
So you have a permit for 4830 South Rogers Street elevated abode as a single-family residence. What we're saying tonight is that if there is a design standard variance for a DADU, then we'd be able to issue a permit for 4820 South Rogers Street as a DADU and convert it. And that's the two structures you have on the property, both have permits.
I'm sorry, could I interrupt? I cannot hear Mr. Cassidy.
I'm sorry. Okay, D? Can
Thank
hear
you.
me? Okay, sorry. Okay, again, we're back to a timing issue and procedurally. I need to come in and apply for another improvement location. Is that what I'm hearing?
If there's no permit on file for 4820 South Rogers Street, we could do what's called an improvement location permit general, which is a very simple application, which is what we use for all DADUs to basically show that it's a detached accessory dwelling unit. It's not a guest home. It's not a two-family dwelling. It is a detached accessory dwelling unit, and that's what we would classify it as.
Okay, so if we do that, if we get rid of the condition, I'm back into the timing and revolving door here is the problem I'm running into. So if we do that and we get rid of condition 3 with the affidavit, we're okay.
Condition number 2 with the affidavit, you're saying you don't want to have that. The request before the Board of Zoning Appeals is a detached accessory dwelling unit, and you would like to, as I understand it, waive all of condition 55. So that would be no affidavit, no 5 acres, not meeting building code. All of the items that are listed in the staff report, you're asking for the BZA to waive that. That's correct.
So that application is why we are here.
Yes.
And why does the decision tonight require yet another application for the same?
This is an application for a variance, not an application for a permit.
And will that application be accompanied by a packet and a hearing?
No.
Thank you.
Who determines whether or not there's an enforcement issue?
Well, based on the ordinance, if there's action taken that is not consistent with the ordinance, then it is an enforcement action that can be taken. But
Who
if we can-
who makes that determination? Is that county? Is that you guys?
yes, if there is a violation of the zoning ordinance, what we do is we reach out to the person, we give them a chance to go ahead and apply for any after-the-fact permits that are needed. But if there's not cooperation or there's not movement to get towards compliance, then it could be further enforcement action with the legal department.
Do you guys have an intention of creating an enforcement effort with this property if this were to get approved?
I think that they're going to work with us to get the proper permits for the floodplain. Is that the question?
So Mr. Lockman,
I'm considering moving that we approve variance 2323. No conditions. I know they're going to put a sewer in as soon as they can. Nobody wants to not have a sewer. They're going to have to work with the state.
yeah, make the motion.
I move that we approve variance 2323 without conditions.
I second that.
And does that, may I clarify, does that include waiving all the 55 with the affidavit?
Right, that without any requirement for conditions.
Thanks.
1, 2, 3, or 4. We're just approving variance 2323.
Okay, so let's have, I seconded that, and let's just call the roll.
Okay, and I'll just clarify for the record. So this is a vote to approve VAR-23-23, a design standards variance from Chapter 802, Condition 55, detached accessory dwelling unit. So a vote in favor to approve this variance waives all of the required conditions under 55. I will note, though, that some of the conditions stated in the staff report still may need to be completed, just not prior to us being able to move forward with this structure, 4820 South Rogers Street, being classified as a detached accessory dwelling unit. So just for confirmation,
Yes,
we're
that's
happy to
my
work with the
understanding.
Casties on that. Okay. All right, any other clarification? All right, it will not hold it up from being permitted. Okay. A vote in favor is a vote to approve the variance without any conditions. Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
No.
Pamela Davidson,
No.
Margaret Clements.
Yes?
Skip Daly.
Yes.
Okay, the variance is approved, 3-2.
Okay, thank you. Let us know, keep us posted if there are any problems and if there's anything we can do on both sides, okay, on both sides. So we're moving forward. Item number 2 has been continued by staff. Item number 3 is VAR-23-35, Topolgus Residential Storage Structure, size variance to Chapter 802.
Not till she's back. No,
Are
we
we-
need a quorum of 3. Okay.
Okay, we're taking a few-minute recess. Tammy had to leave.
I'm sorry, I have to leave. I needed
we
to get
need a
through the
quorum.
one we'd started. There will be a quorum. If not, if we don't have a quorum, I'd stay, but I have another event.
Good night, Mr. Logan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lockman,
Oh,
for
I better take
staying
my
longer
computer.
than you had agreed tonight. Yeah. That's right. Yes.
No, I mean, he can play violin without me listening.
Oh, I want to hear it too. What's he playing?
Hoosier Youth Philharmonic
nice.
Symphony, and
But-
he's a violin.
But what piece is he playing?
Oh, nobody tells me nothing.
Okay. Well, enjoy.
Yes.
Hopefully a matter of minutes. Yeah, a few minutes. Is that okay with you? That's fine. Okay, this was a complicated one, and we're just sorry. The circumstances are very particular.
She's back.
Yeah, and now with Pamela coming back, we have a quorum again, and we can begin once again. So we need to have 3 of the 5 members here in person in order to have a quorum. Just to let you know what was happening, why we couldn't continue. Is Mr. Daly gone?
Yep, right back.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so item number 2 has been continued. Item number 3 is VAR-23-35, Topolgus Residential Storage Structure, size variance to Chapter 802 concerning 1 4.59 plus or minus acre parcel in Polk Township, Section 16, at South State Road 446. And I believe that Mr. Smith will be walking us through this. Hopefully it will be more straightforward. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, so the purpose of this design standards variance is to construct an approximate 4,800 square foot residential storage structure at State Road 446. The proposed location meets all setback and buildable area requirements, but the size of the structure is limited to 1,750 square feet. And this comes from Chapter 802-5D1, which defines a residential storage structure as a structure to be used for private, non-commercial storage by the property owner, does not require the presence of a principal use on the same lot. Structure shall not exceed 1,750 square feet in the Ag RR, FR, or CR zoning districts and 875 feet in all other permitted zoning districts. The purpose of the residential storage structure use is to allow for a storage building prior to building principal use on the property. The ordinance limits the size of the storage structure, which can be designed as a detached garage. It can be designed as a pole barn, so that the land will be utilized for storage purposes as an accessory to a principal use. So, for example, whether that's a residence or it's being used for agricultural purposes, instead of only being utilized for storage. So these are the location and site conditions map. Note that on the site conditions map, all of the red areas consist of non-buildable area. And then these are just some aerial photos, directional west and east. And then these are just some site photos of the general area. So these are the petitioner's letter to the BZA as well as the plot plan that was submitted to staff. And these are also included in the packet, and I can always come back to them. Staff did receive some additional items that were emailed to us earlier this morning, and I have included handouts to the Board of Zoning Appeals members, and I have also emailed them to D. Owens. And I can always come back to these screens if need be.
Oh, neat.
This moves us to the staff recommendation of VAR-23-35, residential storage structure size from Chapter 802. And the staff recommendation is denial. And this motion comes strictly from the practical difficulties having not been demonstrated due to the strict application of the terms in the zoning ordinance. And just for clarification purposes, if the design standards variance is approved, the petitioner will be able to continue with their residential accessory structure permit, which is noted as R-23-913, and comply with all other building and zoning codes. However, if the design standards variance is denied, the petitioner will not be able to construct a residential storage structure beyond 1,750 square feet, or the petitioner will be required to propose another principal use on the lot concurrently to remove the square footage limitation of the building.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Smith. Does any member of the board have questions for staff? Mr. Daly?
I do. When I was reading this over, I never understood the methodology behind the 1,750 square feet. So help me understand that so I can put this in a little bit of an easier perspective, please.
Sure. So actually on page 16 of the packet, it does have a little bit of a description under there. I'm just going to read out loud. So the purpose of the residential storage structure use is to allow for a storage building prior to a building a principal use on the property, such as a residence on the property. The ordinance limits the size of the storage structure, which can be designed as a detached garage, pole barn, etc., so that land will be utilized for storage purposes as accessory to a principal use instead of only being used for storage. So if we have a residential lot and we allow for unlimited square footage of storage with no residents on the property, that's utilizing a property that's residential in nature as more of a convenient storage location for the petitioner, for the owner. So we try to limit that because we know that it's better to have people that actually live on the property and are able to, watch the accessory structure, make sure there's no, there could be crime that occurs to that structure because no one is living there. There could be, what is the limit if not 1,750 square feet? Could someone have 15,000 square feet of storage structures without a residence? Those are some of the questions.
Thank you for that. That
Yep.
was helpful hearing it. My follow-up to that is, how close is the closest neighbor, residential neighbor?
We could look at Elevate. Do you want me to pull up Elevate on the screen? Okay. I'll just look up their last.
If you're having difficulty pulling up that, I'm sure we could get that information from the petitioner when they testify.
So here's Elevate GIS on the screen. There are, it appears to be residences across the street. So would you like me to measure? I think from, it looks like it would be within maybe 750 feet of where the structure would be located. There would be a residence within that proximity.
Could you reduce that a little bit so I could see? All right. All right, thanks.
May I ask a question? Didn't I read in the materials that a residence is planned to be built on this property, or am I dreaming that?
Sorry, one more time.
Are they planning to build a residence on this property?
So initial discussions with the property owner's builder indicated that there were no initial plans to build a home. I think the petitioner, whenever they would like to come up and speak and have their 15 minutes, I think they wanted to maybe address some of those concerns.
Good. Okay, does Ms. Owens have any questions?
No, I do not yet. I did want to know about the living on the property. So that's covered. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So if the petitioner or the petitioner's representative would like to come to the podium and sign in, and then we'll swear you in. And would you please raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
And could you please state your name, and then you have 15 minutes to testify
okay.
about this.
I'm like frazzled from the past hour and a half. Sorry, I don't know how all of you guys have been handling this. Anyway, my name is Sarah Topolgas. I am here representing the landowner of the parcel that we're talking about. That's my father. I've got the power of attorney for him, and I do all of our family dealings, business dealings, anything financial, real estate, anything like that. And I'm also representing my family limited, well, it's a family limited partnership. It's called Topolgas Investments Family. It's the next parcel over. So I'm the managing member of that entity. So I'm here representing both parties. When I talk about this, it's really the whole family. We're always together on what we're doing. But we're talking about two different parcels here. One's under my father's name and one is under my family limited partnership name. But I'm representing both, and my family, you know, I'm here for both parcels. Okay, so what we're trying to do, this was 500 acres of land down by the lake. So if you go down 446, turn right on Allens Creek Road, and it's 500, I think more than 550 acres, and it goes straight down to the lake. And my grandfather started purchasing this property in the 1940s, and then gobbling up little contiguous, little small plots of land or different acres, or people that lived down there and they didn't want it anymore, so they would just sell. So he was trying to create one big contiguous piece of land. And then my family, we just sold part of that, and that's what one of these maps is. So we just sold 360 acres to the Hoosier National Forest, and then we kept 160 acres. And that's what that first map is. You can see to the left is what the Hoosier National Forest bought, and then the remaining area that I have. The second map over shows this little bump out, okay? And that's the 4.5 acres that we're talking about, where I'm trying to build this storage facility. So, I mean, the purpose of these maps is to just show how big the land is and then compared to the smaller spot, but it's all contiguous. So basically what's going on is we own two parcels of land, the big one for 160 and a smaller one that's 4.5 acres. And right now, currently, I'm allowed to build a structure, a storage structure of 1,750 square feet on one parcel, the smaller one, and I can build another one on the 160 acres. So I'm allowed to build two because I own two not me, but together, the family, we own two. So what I'm asking here today for the variance is, can we build one on the little bump out piece of land instead of building two different structures? And one reason why it's problematic for me and my family is in the bigger plot of land where it's 160 acres, that's all forest. And it has been, for forever. On the smaller plot, the 4.5 acres, that has already been, the trees have already been cut down, and it was referred to as a borrow pit, where when they were building the highway there, the 446 and then to Allens Creek Road, they scooped up the land and filled in the edge. Okay, so it's like we were allowing them to use the land and then spread it to distribute the way that they would build the highway. So all these trees, the forest has already been cut down. So that's why we're trying to place this storage unit on the parcel where the trees are gone. The trees have already been removed. So what I'm asking for is I'm allowed to build one structure where the trees have been removed. I'm allowed to build another structure where it's forest, and I don't want to cut those trees down. I mean, it's going to be expensive to cut the trees down, and I don't want to cut the trees down. And I also don't want to build a second structure. I mean, why build two when I can build one together? And that's basically what I'm asking, what the variance is about. Instead of having two, one, and instead of chopping down a bunch of trees and clearing space, then just build a larger structure over on the part where the trees have already been removed.
Thank you, Ms. Topolkas. And do members of the board have questions? Yes, Ms. Davidson.
And any plans to build a house on that property? Why did I think I read that somewhere?
Well, I don't think it's in my written notes, but here's kind of how this whole thing evolved, and then I do have an answer in the end for that might help with this whole thing. When we applied for this building, and we just went to the building department and said, hey, can we build a storage unit down here? We're trying to put all the equipment that we use to maintain this land. And the answer was, yeah, sure, of course you can. Then it goes to planning. Then planning gets back to us and says, yeah, you're allowed to build one for 1750 square feet. You're not allowed to build one any larger than that. And if you want something larger, then you're going to have to come here and get a variance approved. Please tell everyone why, why you need a variance. And my answer to that is we've got a lot of stuff, machines, and that's what map number 3 is. We have a lot of machines and equipment and tools that are used to maintain the 160 acres of land. I mean, it's like, actually there's a list of them on there. A mower trailer, a tractor, a bush hog, a dump trailer, ATV, a log splitter, welder, mower. I mean, there's just a lot of large machinery, equipment that we have spread all over Bloomington in different places, and we're trying to combine it all into one spot. Okay, so that was step number 1. Then after going through, I've spoken with Sean several times on the phone, and we've gone through different materials, and I'm like, oh, well, now today at 4 o'clock, I finally realized that we could have applied and just had a residence this whole time. Instead of building the barn as a storage unit, we could build the exact same barn in the exact same spot, and if we put a toilet and a kitchen and a bedroom, then it officially would be a residence, and we wouldn't be asking for a variance, and I wouldn't have any square footage requirements. So.
But then you wouldn't have a shed to store all your equipment.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. Now it's got to come back to me of, okay, let's redesign the barn, and we'll have, in my mind, I don't know, I've got my 2 builders right over here. We haven't even gone over plans like that. But in my mind, we could have a lower level where we've got everything stored, and then on an upper level have a couple bedrooms and a kitchen and a toilet. I mean, to me, toilets are good anywhere, okay? I mean, I'm not particularly one for going out in the wilderness, but I would be thrilled to have a toilet inside of this barn. And if I have to call it a residence to get the toilet, then maybe that's going to be how it goes. I don't know.
Mr. Daly?
Where are you currently storing all of this equipment?
In various locations around the town. We drive it down there.
The answer I was hoping, well, not hoping to hear, but I thought I was going to hear was it's not on site, obviously, because it has
correct.
to be in a building locked up. Most of it, at least, has to.
Yes.
So there's an economic difficulty of having to maintain this 166 acres for which you've been a steward of our environment. Is that correct? Yep. And you have to go out of your way and have a difficulty having to go out of your way to bring this equipment and this machinery onto the site in order to maintain it. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're trying to just have something on site where everything is
That's,
consolidated, contained, how, like under roof and,
you're good. You answered my question.
yeah.
Thanks.
Do you have any objections to putting a toilet, a bedroom, and a kitchen in there?
Well, no, now that I know what's, this has been a couple months
Right.
And I'm it's sorry to say, had any of us even known that those were the requirements, we would have just applied that way.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think we have a problem with it.
Because that would solve a lot of
Yeah.
things for us, because once we permit a non-compliant structure, then everybody wants that.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do at this point except to make it subject to a residence,
A variance would not be required if a
Right.
residence was present
That's
on the
right.
site.
That's right. So it really is factually up to you if
you-
that's going to be your intent or not, because if that is your intent, you do not need this.
you could withdraw.
I think the point is, well, one of the discussions today was come forward, present this information to you. If it's denied, tomorrow, go back to planning and reapply as residential.
That would be so much better for us.
Okay.
It would be so much better for us because,
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yes. and
Absolutely right.
Also, I would like to just ask staff while we're at it, are there any independent freestanding 4,750 storage units in the county?
It's a great question.
I'm not sure. I would have
Yeah.
to look into that.
Yeah.
Well, I would follow that up with, are there any other 166 acre
Right.
forests
It's huge.
that
It's
are
huge.
in the county that would require that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it was a structure that was solely used to have equipment for maintaining the land, let's say it was only like mowers and other agricultural equipment, there could be an exception to that because obviously we have agricultural farms that do not have a residence on them that have ag storage structure barns. But I believe the image that you provided, which is helpful to kind of detail why you need that size, includes items like boats and ATVs, which, obviously you're able to store those items, but that kind of kicks it out of the classification of being solely for the maintenance of that type of property. So we apologize if there was any miscommunication on the ability to have a residence on there to get rid of the storage structure size limitation, but that certainly is an option to you. But, if granted the variance tonight, you wouldn't have to put a residence on the property. You could just build the storage structure. So I guess the
A
question
storage
is,
structure with residential items to pass to get the build. I'm just trying to get the building permit. Okay. I'm trying to get a permit to be able to build.
Does the property abut to water? Does the property?
It does, well, no. Not the portion that I own anymore, but on the property, there are 5 ponds. That's why there's a boat.
So there's a John boat there to maintain.
Yeah, you
the
have
water.
to go out in the
All
middle.
right.
You can't believe
Thanks.
this, but the beavers cut down and you're in the middle of the lake and have to go do something before the dam floods.
I will just mention, just because it may delay your timeline, if you do not have a septic permit already into the health department, that can take several weeks. So if you want to add a bathroom and other plumbing to the property, you'll have to have that septic permit. So I think if you want to have the question before the BZA still about having the storage structure without a residence, aka no plumbing needed, then that's still a valid question for them to vote on. If you want to withdraw your request and build a residence on that, please note that it may not mean tomorrow we can issue you a permit because you still have to have a septic. You have to go back to the drawing board on creating a residential space that has to meet building code. So the certified plot plan. There's some other conditions in there that will not make this immediate. So
I hear you. I have no idea if there's a septic permit on the smaller spot, the 4.5. I know there's a septic permit on the 160. I don't care. I don't want to build in the 160 because then I have to tear down the forest to do that.
right.
What do either one of you want me to have a vote?
I
Do
think
you want to move forward tonight? Or do
Board
you want
Member
me to
Owens
wait and see
has
what
her
happens
hand
tomorrow?
raised.
Okay.
Ms. Owens has her hand raised. Yes.
Thank you very much. What I'm hearing here is somebody who's obviously an excellent steward of a large amount of land that needs a big building to store all their toys. I've been in that boat too, wondering what I was going to do with my junk in my case. But if there's no really further discussion, I have a motion.
Okay, well, we do need to hear from the public.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay, so if you're finished with your testimony, Ms. Topolgas, then we will hear from the public. And if there's anybody who argues against what you're proposing, you'll have an opportunity to come back.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there members of the public who would like to speak either in favor of this petition or in opposition? If you're in favor or in opposition, please come to the podium, raise your virtual hand on Zoom, or press *9 on the telephone in order to be recognized. Okay, we don't see anyone, so I think we're back to Ms. Owens for a motion.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. On the matter of variance 23-35, the Topolgas residential storage structure size variance, in spite of staff recommendation, of course, they have to follow what the law and the rules are. I would like to recommend that we approve that variance for Section 16, South State Road 446, et cetera.
I would like to add to that motion, if you will allow me to, Ms. Owens, that practical difficulties exist solely for the basis that size larger than 1,750 square feet are required to house the machinery and the equipment required to maintain the acreage that is in question.
I would happily accept that as a friendly amendment. And of course, the rationale is the good stewards of forests do not want to cut down a bunch more trees in order to meet a standard that can easily, in this case, be justified and changed.
And
so thank you.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, so
May I just ask a quick question? We've heard from no neighbors complaining about this, and they got a notice of this possible structure. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
they're their own neighbors.
Yeah, they're their own neighbor. Well, there are people across the street.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, okay, so that's right. So if you would call the roll.
And just to have a clarifying question to the motion, is it to allow for an accessory structure size of 4,800 square feet, or are you just waiving the 1,750?
Still allow 4,800.
Okay, limit it to 4,800. Okay, so a motion.
60 by 80 building.
Sorry, what was that, Dee?
It's a 60 by 80 building. It
Yes.
would take a 60 by 80 building to get all that equipment in, without a doubt.
Yes, yes. Okay, so the motion is to approve VAR-23-35, which is the Topolgas residential storage structure size variance to Chapter 802. And this is in relation to a residential permit R-23-913, which is a request for a 4,800 square foot structure located on the property without a principal use. So a vote yes is a vote to approve the limitation being upwards of 4,800 square feet. Guy Loftman, sorry, Dee Owens,
Yes.
okay. Pamela Davidson,
yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Skip Daly.
Yes.
Okay, motion is approved 4-0.
Okay, and I don't believe we have any other items on the agenda. I want to thank the public tonight for your patience, your perseverance, and I want to thank staff for doing the best always on behalf of our county and to help us through these complicated issues of reconciling regulations with community need. And so thank you to everyone for coming tonight. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
you.